Hello and welcome to How to Achieve 99% Attendance District-Wide. So happy to be with you today. We have Legacy Preparatory Charter Academy led by Superintendent Stacy Weaver with her team, Mr. Javier Chaparro and Mrs. Brandy Braley, along with Judge John Payton of Payton Nixon Associates, and they will take us through the process today of how to achieve 99% attendance district-wide. My name is Kathy Ward, and I'm very happy to be navigating us through this oh-so-important topic today. So let's get started. Welcome, Judge John Payton.
Thank you, Kathy.
How are you?
Perfect.
Excellent.
Having a great time.
Excellent. Well, glad to have you with us. Let's start off with how did you get involved in attendance and public schools? How did this come about?
So, interesting story. 17 and a half years of age, I'm at Plano East Senior High School, and I learned that to be a justice of the peace, you only have to be 18 years of age, live in Texas for 6 months, and then you can be a justice of the peace. And so I ran for office, got elected at 18 years of age, and it was funny. I took office, and it was about a month that goes by, and little Joan Gura from the Plano Independent School District, and you've got to imagine, full German-blooded woman, about 4'5", and she has got a purpose, and her purpose was truancy. And she came in and she said, I can't get any other judges to do this. Will you do this? I've got a program we can lay out. And I said, absolutely, that's my job, let's do this. And she goes, here's one condition, you can't date your defendants. And I said, okay, Joan, that's not a problem. Because again, I was 18, so.
That'll work. All right, well, from the bench, what did you do that you found to be the most successful intervention for the students who came in front of your court?
So, the most interesting part of creating this program was the actual continuation of learning and growing through the years with the students and the families. It went from a 9-page court order to a 1-page court order in about 10 or 12 years, because I did find that one of the most successful things that you can do is put the family unit back together. If the family unit's not together, not working together, then it's hard for a student to want to go to school and be successful, just as it is for a parent to want to go to work and be successful. So a lot of counseling, a lot of behavioral counseling, encouragement, accountability was probably one of the biggest things. And in writing that court order, we used different means to create accountability to encourage school attendance, i.e. signing in the morning, which gave a secretary or a clerk an opportunity to create a relationship with that student, or a daily homework and attendance sheet where the student had to see the teacher every period, every day, and that teacher had a chance to make a difference, even over just a 1 or 2 minute conversation, by creating trust with that kid.
And that is so needed nowadays. I think actually more now than ever. So you're retired. You're now working with schools across the state of Texas on truancy and attendance. How did this come about?
So, interesting story. Dr. Nix, the Nix part of Payton Nixon Associates, who was an educator for 38 years in the state of Texas as a high school principal, came to me and he said, hey, we need to take what you're doing in court, write it up as a program, and go out and teach schools under the 2015 law, the Truancy Prevention Measure Statute, how to help keep kids out of court. I think we can use truancy prevention measures as an intervention at a very formal level and create this court atmosphere, called it the tribunal. And that's how it came to birth, is that we created, and at that point, the Truancy Prevention Measure Tribunal program.
Okay, let me ask you, what are the statutory grounds that districts have to be able to enforce truancy interventions on campus?
So,
because this isn't a court. This is
right.
This is on campus. This is very close and personal to the students and the educators and the teachers there. How does that work?
So in 2015, Senator Whitmire out of Houston helped rewrite the laws in regards to truancy. And what he did is he shifted the power from the court into the school districts, even to the point where if the school districts employ a certified peace officer, that certified peace officer can go to the home and bring that child to school. If it's a non-peace officer, same thing, except the person has to get permission from the parent to be able to go into the home to bring the child out. And so the statute changed dramatically. The power was given under Section 250951, and that is, again, the truancy prevention statute. And in the courts, the rule of law changed from shall to may require a student under order, whereas the school districts went from may to you shall impose these truancy prevention measures. And what's funny, when you put them side by side, the two statutes, they're almost exactly the same in what they're able to do.
Excellent. Now, I'm curious, how did you come to work with Legacy?
So a relationship with them prior to, I actually would send kids to Legacy Preparatory Charter Academy right there in Plano, because I was out of the Plano court, and we had Allen and Plano and Frisco ISD, McKinney ISD, Lovejoy ISD, Salina ISD, and there were students that didn't fit that normal standard classroom environment. And so when Legacy opened over off of Plano Parkway and US 75, I started referring kids. Well, then when I retired, because I'd had a relationship with the administration, I went to them and said, this is something we're doing. Are you interested? And they said, oh, goodness gracious, we are. And to the tune of $800,000 in 2 years being returned in attendance dollars.
Let's repeat that. That is significant, and I can't imagine there's any school listening that their ears wouldn't perk up when they hear those numbers. 2 years.
2 years.
$800,000?
$800,000. First year, $500,000. That was an implementing process.
Okay.
And process from working with documentation, creating a much more formal level of documentation where parents will pay a little closer attention. You know, it's like a 3-day letter going home as a courtesy versus a, hey, you've been summoned to appear before the Truancy Prevention Tribunal at the local high school or the local admin building. And so that process, by formalizing it and following through, you have to have a buy-in. And when you've got people that buy in and they follow through, parents pay attention. And they love the opportunity. They love the opportunity to be able to take care of it in the school building like that, because they weren't paying attention before versus having to go to the courtroom.
Well, and this seems like, and correct me if I'm wrong, a win-win-win situation, the biggest win being for that student.
Absolutely. We graduate them. Grades go up, dramatically. There's going to be a PowerPoint presentation that'll show at Legacy where kids entered the program, the tribunal program, with 1 or 2 passing grades or none, and went to 4 to 6 passing grades after entering the tribunal.
That's incredible.
Test scores go up, grades go up, behavior goes and improves. We have been shocked by the results of the process, which is why we're talking today to all the folks out there in the audience.
Sounds great. Well, thank you so much, Judge Payton. We appreciate all the good work you've done here locally and in the state of Texas. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
All right, we are going to turn our attention next over to Mrs. Stacy Weaver. I'm going to shift my chair a little bit here so I can look at her smiling face. All right, so Mrs. Weaver, how long have you been in education, and where are some of the areas that you have been an educator at? Different school districts, states, where have you been? What's your story in education?
Sure. So this is my 21st year in education.
Excellent.
I started at a local junior college, teaching in the junior college. I have a prior background in law enforcement, so I actually taught in the area of law enforcement. And then when I retired from being a police officer, I was just subbing, something to do until I figured out my next career, because I started young and I retired young. And the principal, after 2 days, walked in with a contract, and the next thing I knew, I was a teacher. I worked with dropout prevention in Florida for my first 2 years, 7th and 8th grade reading, and just fell in love with what I was doing, and that the whole Title I process of, taking these students who really were in 7th and 8th grade, they had never passed their standardized tests, and we just built such a tremendous rapport and relationship with all these students, and their scores came up, and I just realized this is what I was going to do.
Isn't it amazing the difference when you take the time, and obviously you were called to be a police officer, which thank you so much for your service. We appreciate that truly. But when you pay attention and you care about the kids, they know it. They know it, And how long have you been with Legacy?
So this is my 4th year with Legacy.
Okay.
So the prior 3 years, I served in different capacities as a global systems director. Then I was promoted to the Senior Director of School Operations, and then when our illustrious Superintendent, Dr. Good, who started the charter school, retired, I've been put in as the interim superintendent in her position. So this is going to be my 4th year with Legacy.
Excellent. Well, congratulations. We're glad to hear that. Okay, the law change in truancy back in 2015. What did you find that your law enforcement background helped you with when it came to interpreting the law? Because again, like Judge Payton discussed, there are certain things in the law that allow campuses across the state, across the country, to do this type of a tribunal thing, which is much more personal, and I think you get more immediate results. I know Legacy has. So what did you find helped in your law enforcement background when it came to interpreting this law?
So more than, and I'll go back to that, but I just want to touch on this first.
Yes.
We went from being punitive, where parents were anywhere from fines to possibly winding up, incarcerated because their child wasn't going to school. So it gave the officer who was enforcing those such a negative response that they were going for such a negative reason. When it changed to this process, we went from punitive and negative to, honestly, counselors, social workers, it felt more like working with them, working with the schools. So when I moved, in working with schools, I understood what it looked like before, and I realized we had such a tremendous opportunity to build relationships, to provide families. I mean, when we teamed up with Payton and Nix, they gave us, it must be 10 pages of resources. So before, where it was just, serve the parent, bring them in, penalties, now it's, here's all the help. Here's so many resources, and so it went from a punitive to a social emotional environment, and I think that speaks in volumes of what we're doing.
I think so, and I think it's Legacy. What I've seen with y'all over the years, very personal and in touch with the students and the families, and I know you're taking that to the next level, and I think it's so important that you have that kind of a relationship, and it's not a threatening kind of thing. It's empowerment.
Absolutely. And so I can tell you, as I came up, I was a teacher, and had just hated leaving the classroom, but I got to the point where I felt I could make such a difference going to a principal's position. And my goal as a principal was no matter what scores were, no matter what was going on the campus, if you didn't have a heart for a child, you couldn't teach on my campus. You could have the best scores on the campus, but if you didn't love children and you couldn't provide them that social emotional support that they needed, then you just don't belong in a classroom with children. So at Legacy, we live that. I mean, Dr. Good started that 10 years ago, the social emotional learning, and our teachers and our staff have developed that in our restorative practices. So we were already in the non-punitive mode and more of the counseling and the circle time in the morning and discussion and restorative practices instead of punishment. So when we teamed with Payton and Nix, they just took us to that next step, just elevated us with their program, and we already were in that mindset, so it was a perfect fit. So
it really was just a perfect match. So let me ask you a little bit more about that. So truancy prevention measures and understanding them and implementing them in an effective way, it can be time consuming. So what process do you put into place after you once y'all brought Judge Payton on, what was the process that you put into place? How did you learn to save time and streamline it, I guess would be my question.
Excellent question. So I was put in touch with Project Education, and that's the software program that aligns to everything we're doing in truancy. Judge Payton and Dr. Nix were already working with them with Godly, another school district. So I went and visited with Godly, and they took me through Project Education and how they used it. And it was just amazing, because what happens is when you're using Project Education, it aligns to our truancy program, because what it is teachers have a role, then the counselor has a role, the principals have a role, and then, and myself, my role at the time when I was overseeing our campuses, my role was to follow behind everybody. So I'm making sure that my PEMS clerks are getting out those letters to parents, and that the teachers are calling parents, on that third absence. And then on the fifth absence, we do a new set of paperwork, an SABIP we call it, and we put that in place. And then when they hit 8 absences, that's when the directors, the principals, would call home and speak to the parents, say, we need you to come in for our tribunal. And so everything, that software is completely aligned to that process. So all this paperwork and, not knowing if, and transferring it off, now everything was digital, and it really just gave us such a better, really just brought us all together, because we're all working in one system.
It's kind of like checks and balances, almost,
and I can see what everybody's done and make sure they're doing it.
And that's one of the things I was going to ask about, because I know y'all have put a priority at Legacy for district wide for all the employees. I mean, if you are there and you touch the lives of these students, this is a priority and you're part of it. So the process that you've put in place, and you're saying with the software, it's actually easier, and that way you can see what's going on. You can have admin, you can have the ability to put in notes or not put in notes. So describe that a little bit more and how you've created efficiencies through that.
Sure. So each teacher is assigned a set of students. They monitor their attendance. When they hit their third absence, then that teacher will call the parent and all of the notes go into Project Education. Everybody can see it. When it hits 5 absences, the counselor sees it. They run reports. They all have their reports that they know they have to run. The counselor sees that. She says, okay, now we've exceeded, the limit. We're going to do, we call the parent. They have the parent. They go over everything, and explain to them that if they hit 8, then we're going to be scheduling a tribunal. So the counselor really has a very, extensive meetings. They really do a big piece of that. And then, of course, the principal sets it up if that's the issue. Then we come together in front of Judge Payton. He serves as our magistrate. And I think Dr. Nix does that as well, but we've worked with Judge Payton. And basically, Judge Payton's really become part of the Legacy family. So, I mean, he knows our students as well as our principals do. It's amazing, the rapport that he builds. And he's got an amazing personality. We have kids that we couldn't even, just could not bring in. It's amazing the relationship that he forms because he comes from the heart. So all those meetings are all from a social emotional point. So the parents don't feel like they're in trouble. They just feel like here's this great support team led by, this magistrate and the principals and everybody involved.
Well, and let's talk a little bit more about that. So we've got a good understanding as far as how your staff reacted to it and all the positives that come with this. You touched on it a little bit just now about the students' reaction and the parents' reaction. So let's talk about that before we take the next our next panelist on.
Sure. So what I'll tell you is that you should just be letters. Your child has 3 absences. Your child has 10 absences. And then they go to court. The old system was, you have, if they don't come and they don't comply, Mr. Shaparo, you'll meet Mr. Shaparo soon. He and I did home visits. We were knocking on doors. Judge Payton helped us out on that. Our counselors, we go together. And so it was such a different approach. Parents saw how much we cared. When we went there, it wasn't, there was no negative conversation. It was, we're here, we're concerned, we want your child, back in. And I know when Judge Payton was letting they brought in like $800,000. You have to remember, we're a small district. We have about 1,600 students. So $800,000 is probably $5 million for a big ISD.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So for us, that's a tremendous amount of money that was brought back. I mean, and I would be remiss in not telling you that every Friday we have a meeting and we look at absences and we look at trends and whose classroom. I mean, we dive that deep.
So you're proactive
extremely
versus reactive. And again, you can find out. And then if I'm a parent and I don't know my child has been missing this much school because I'm working 2 jobs now. Well, okay, then we can figure that out sooner rather than later. And I mean, that's a huge win for the kids.
And we show the parents where to look. You see, so there's so many things that parents, because we do have hardworking parents that don't know, they just don't have the time. But if we tell them you can get on, we use Skyward. Get on Skyward. The counselor can set you up with your passwords. You can look every day to see what classes your child attended or missed. And so we were really proud of the fact that during COVID, we were ranging 97, 98% attendance rate. Yes, which was fantastic. I mean, some days we had 100%. It was unbelievable.
Which is amazing when you were hearing all over the news all these stories about, they just couldn't get kids to even log in, and then parents were devastated and kids were dropping out of school left and right. Legacy, during the pandemic, y'all had a success story.
Yeah, I could tell you, since Mr. Shaparo is here tonight, I could talk about him. He had, I think, close to, if not 100% students show up and take STAR. Where do you hear that?
You don't.
But that's because he used this system and he made those contacts. His contacts with parents, I couldn't even begin to tell you.
Oh,
he's
that's
amazing.
fantastic.
Yeah, he's wonderful. Yeah.
Well, what a great segue. So thank you, Mrs. Weaver, for segueing into our next guest, who is Mr. Javier Shaparo. So how are you today?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
Great, doing well. Thank you. And it's so great to have you as part of our panel. Now, you are the Legacy Mesquite head principal, correct? Okay, so and high school students only.
High school.
Okay, high school students. Okay, because we're gonna talk about that because when we have our teacher on, we're gonna talk a little bit more about that. This is used in all levels. This is used in all levels. This is K through 12. Let's just jump right in. How do you like the new truancy program at Legacy?
Love it, love it. It helped us get the attention of the students and make them feel the importance of the attendance and their education, and also the parents' attention as well.
Absolutely, which is, again, you've got to have. It's a team effort. It's not just the teachers. It's not just the administration. It's not just the kids. It's not just the parents. It's everybody working together. So I love that. Okay, we talked a little bit with Mrs. Weaver about just during the pandemic how things were so different. So during the pandemic, did you find that this was a helpful tool to get kids online as well as back in school?
Especially during the pandemic.
Okay.
During the pandemic, we had three cases. Students do not connect to their classes, or students connect to their classes but just connect to their classes while they're playing PlayStation or whatever here. So the TPM program helped us discuss those items with the parents, right? Yeah, he's connected, but he's not necessarily in class. So the other thing is, during the pandemic, or actually during the TPM meetings that we had with the parents, they were able to see all these instances where the students were not paying attention or submitting assignments and things like that, because the program that we have allows us to enter information before we have these meetings. So that information is available for the counselors, for the teachers, and also for Judge Payton. So whenever we have these meetings, we can open that and then discuss those items with the parents. So that's, especially during the pandemic, it was very good tool.
And I'm so glad to hear that. Again, it's so great to hear success stories from the pandemic versus some of the heartbreak that you hear. And unfortunately, we hear that all over the country. So I'm really glad to hear that. Okay, why do you think the Truancy Prevention Measure Tribunal has had such success on your campus, and really rather quickly, I might say?
Well, what happens is that it actually makes the students feel accountable for his own education or her own education. And it also brings the awareness to the parents. See, during the pandemic, many parents, most of our parents work. That's the moment of that, right? So they're away from home. The students are unsupervised, and this is a high school, right? So they have all the right to do that. The only thing here is that without that supervision, the parents do not know that the students are not connecting and are not attending classes. So, that allowed us to bring that awareness to the parents. So if you think that your child is in school, no, he's not.
Right.
So in the process, like Ms. Weaver was explaining, at the third absence, the teachers are calling the parents. And then at the fifth absence, the counselors is contacting the parents as well. And then at the 7th or 8th absence, the principal is calling the parents. After that, then we issue a SABIP document that is actually a way for us to tell the parent, you're going to have to come to this meeting with the judge, and then we're going to discuss that.
What does that stand for, that acronym? I love in education, and I used to be a special education teacher, so boy, we have a lot of acronyms. Tell us about that acronym.
Student Absence Behavior Intervention Plan.
Okay, perfect. Okay, well, makes sense. There you go. All right, so have there been any collateral successes as a result of the truancy prevention program? Have there been any, obviously attendance has gone up. That's good. Has there been any other success stories that have come along with that for your high school students?
Yes, there are two that I can think of.
Okay.
One is, our teachers are really, they do really care for our students' academic achievement, right? And when the students are not there, they're not learning anything, right? So the teachers feel supported with this program.
And that's a good thing, because a lot of times I know, in education, when a technology, a change happens in technology or process, for some reason educators were a little slow to come around to the change. But it sounds like your campus, both campuses, Legacy has just embraced this up and down the roster.
And that's the second, I guess, benefit that we got. The students were forced, in a way, to actually learn communication platforms that we did not use before. Yes, we do have a platform that allows us to upload assignments and and it's called Echo. And
Right.
but other platforms like Google Meets or Google Classrooms and all that, those tools that are used in colleges and all that, this is high school, right?
Right.
So they were exposed to those platforms, and now they are very, I guess, savvy on maneuvering around. So
Oh, I
that's-
love it. And that, again, it's just a win-win all the way around for staff, students, parents. That's awesome. Okay, so from a staff perspective, what did you have to do to get your staff on board? And then I want to piggyback on that question. And then how much work did your staff have to do so they would have buy-in to this program? How did you maneuver that as a principal?
Well, first of all, we needed to provide good training for them to understand what the process is and learn the system, the project education, and be able to manage it and enter information and so on and so forth. So that's one. Training our teachers, educating them as to what the project education is, and also being able to provide information and updates and all that. One of the things that they do appreciate is that we keep in contact with them, keep them updated on specific students. He went to she went to the TPM, and now the teacher can see that the student is behaving better as far as attending classes.
What I hear you saying, Mr. Chaparro, is communication has improved.
Yes.
Would you say that's a fair statement?
I would say so. Yes. The administration has a better, communication, or the communication flows better towards the teachers, because now we have a sort of like a common topic to discuss at this
Yes.
point when it comes to students' attendance.
Yes, and everybody's reaching towards that common goal. Now, you yourself, you've sat in these proceedings. How do your families react to this?
Contrary to what
process?
I thought it was going to be a very traumatic experience.
Okay.
But no, the
Wow,
parents
okay.
are happy about this, and this is, and I'm going to touch on what Ms. Weaver said. This is not a punitive action. This is a prevention measure, and the way Judge Payton puts it out there is they do appreciate it because the parents come here thinking that they're going to be paying fines and all that. No, they are not paying nothing yet.
That's a key word that you said there, yet. And this is the way to avoid that. This
Yes.
is the way to avoid that.
It is. And
So do you see relief from parents when they find that out, or kind of like, whew, okay, they're on my side?
Yeah, and the ones who did not know that the students were not connecting or were not
Right,
attending
right.
classes, those were upset, but not with the school, not with us. They appreciated what we did. However, they were upset with their children. So that's
And I think he's bringing a great point
Yeah.
out. And he can attest to this. So many parents, the children don't always tell them the whole story. So
Wait,
when
what is this you
Yes,
speak
yes.
of?
So
What?
there were many instances when we were in tribunals, and when we show the truth and teachers come in, and the children then say, well, so that comes out. But
yeah.
the one thing Mr. Spar didn't say, but I will tell you that I noticed on his campus, once students entered into the tribunal program, it was rare that they had too many absences again.
yes.
And you wanna talk about that?
After they came to the program, their absences just dropped to almost zero.
And that's incredible. I mean, what a success story. And this is one of those things, you see so many negative things about kids and youth and education on the news. This is something that should be celebrated. So your next interview should be on one of the major news channels. No pressure. Oh, you've already done that before. Okay. Well, thank you so much for loving the students the way you do and all of your service. And so, Principal Chaparro, we really appreciate your helping us out today.
My pleasure.
All right. Thank you so much.
you.
Well, fantastic. We have heard from our judge, we've heard from our superintendent, we've heard from a building administrator. We have a different perspective that's a very important perspective coming on next. We've got Brandy Braley, and you have been in the classroom and a leader on the Plano Legacy campus. So let's talk about your role in this as a classroom teacher. You know, your boots on the ground with those kids every day, all day. So let's talk about that. When you heard about this new attendance program and what it would require, and this is one of those things when you're a teacher, you're like, oh, great. Okay, so I need 10 more things to do today. Thanks. Please be honest. What was your initial reaction?
It was initially really overwhelming.
Okay.
To know we have another initiative in the middle of a pandemic.
Yeah, no pressure.
Just something new. Yeah, but once I was able to see the program and all of the different aspects within it, it made it really easy to get on board and buy into this process because it was very student-focused and in a positive way.
Well, and I love it. So at first, and I appreciate your honesty, because at first you're like, okay, how many steps are going to be involved in this? How much time is this going to take? But it sounds like, and as we ask some more questions, I think this actually is a benefit to you as a classroom teacher. So you were asked to help with student attendance behavior improvement plans, which is the SABIP. Yes. Thank you very much. There's that acronym. Very important acronym, though, when it comes to attendance and attendance dollars and getting those kids into the class. What did you find the responses to be from the families when you would go over this behavior plan?
I think a lot of families were...
And tell me at first, like when y'all first started this, and then how is it now?
Yeah, so at first I think the families were caught off guard because we were being so thorough with the students during COVID. Some people got very relaxed, and so us bringing in this process, it was kind of eye-opening for them that we're not all always on when nobody's watching, and that the kids were often taking breaks or not logging onto those classes or really having a hard time emotionally, so they weren't connecting because it was very difficult. But once we laid out the plan and showed them that it was to help and there weren't punitive measures that were going to help you grow, we had a lot more buy-in from the parents. And once they realized that, oh, my kid can come back to campus, you're going to help in that way, it made it so much easier, and we had such high yielding results from those students that came back when it came to incredible scores and just overall growth.
That's incredible. And then, then that helps the families, especially during the pandemic. Well, and even, in society now, it's tough out there for parents, it's tough out there for everybody. So being able to bring some sort of relief and help, I think did that strengthen the bond between you as a teacher and your kids' parents?
Yeah. So we were in more frequent contact with parents. I know there was several parents that I was calling on a daily basis, and not with, oh, your student didn't show up, but calling to say, hey, so-and-so did really great in class today, and they showed up, they were involved in the conversations, and it really helps that parent know that we're following through with what we've put in place, and we're not just saying, okay, we're giving you an SABIP, and okay, you're going to get a letter when they're at 8 days. It's right. This is what we're doing to help and prevent that 8-day letter from happening.
I love that. Actually being able to bring good news to a parent. Yes. What a crazy concept.
It's my favorite thing
that.
to do.
I bet it is. I've seen you in the classroom. I believe that. Okay, so at what point did you discuss the possibility of going to a truancy tribunal, and then how did that work out with your families?
Yeah, so I took a different approach. I approached it from the student level first, because I teach high school, 9th to 12th grade. Right. So a lot of these kids are heads of their house. They come from split families and are in charge during the day when parents aren't home because they have their younger siblings. So I went over the process with them, explained what the attendance laws were.
And this is with your students in your classroom?
Yes.
Did you make this part of a lesson plan and just part of a teaching opportunity?
We did. We do check-ins every morning in the class, like restorative circles. Okay. And so it was during one of our social emotional checks. Okay. We talked about attendance and how you have to have a 90% attendance rate in each class to earn credit. And at high school level, you have to have the full credit to graduate. So we went over that, and I talked to them about the process and making sure if they're at doctor's appointments, appointments, they're getting notes, or if something's coming up, they're communicating with the teachers so we can mitigate those absences. And so once they understood that better, they were really good about calling or emailing and saying, I'm having a hard time connecting, my internet's out, or I have a doctor's appointment this day, I'm going to bring the note in tomorrow. So they were really good about communicating, advocating for themselves. For the parents,
which is a great life lesson in and of itself. You know, to have a young adult, you see so many kids who aren't able to go out there. They graduate from high school, some even from college, and then they aren't able to make it in the real world, so to speak, and they end up back on mom and dad's couch. So you're empowering kids at a very young and very formative age and an important time in their life.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's fantastic. Okay,
Yes.
Do you believe that the tribunal-assisted classroom teachers did doing this and performing your regular classroom duties? And again, please be honest. Were there any issues there? Did they find difficulties? Were there complaints? And then at first, and then how is that working currently?
Yeah, there were a lot of teachers that were weary because, again, we're in the middle of a pandemic. It's a new program. We got access on our campus before we got training. So for them, when they looked at it, it was a little overwhelming. But once we were able to sit down with John Payton and go over the program itself and all of the different aspects that were for teachers, it kind of gave us a easier way to talk to each other, because we might not have all been together at the same time or had time to talk to each other. So we could go into the notes section and see that, okay, Johnny's had real difficulty showing up for math class, but there's no notes in here from English. So what is going on in English class that's bringing Johnny in that's not happening in math that we can try and implement? Or I can see that, Susie's struggling in every one of her classes. What can we do as a team to help her? And so it really amplified the communication between teachers without us having to seek each other out. It was just there for us.
Fantastic. Okay, so if there was one thing that you could leave teachers with in this process, what would that be? And just one thing, like what jumps to your mind?
The social emotional needs of the kids, because that's what drives attendance.
Love it. And let's talk, why is that? Let's talk about the success from, and again, I'm not asking you and I play a therapist on TV. Thank you. But you do have a mental health background as well. You do have a background in counseling. Let's talk about the importance of that.
Yeah, so a lot of kids at this age, even if they're not experiencing little traumas at home or even big trauma, they're experiencing different versions of themselves because they don't know who they are. And they're looking for acceptance and they want to be heard. And a lot of times they're not heard at home. So when they come to school, this is their place where they want to be heard. And if they're shut down in the classroom or, shoved to the side, they're not going to want to show up. They're not going to want to participate. If you give them an open forum to express themselves and be leaders in the classroom, they're going to show up and they're going to be engaged.
That's so true. And, you hear as adults of all ages, you hear stories and horror stories where you can tell where somebody's growth and opportunities in life were stunted because of something traumatic that happened at school. And this is one of those things where y'all are able to get on top of that before a situation gets out of control. And place, what I love about this is you're able to place that student knows they have value because an adult is giving them the time of day. And I wanted to ask, before I ask you your final question, you're on a campus, and I know you're a high school teacher, but you're on a campus where it's K through 12. So obviously in high school, attendance is imperative. We know that. We understand graduation rates and all of that kind of stuff and STAR and all this kind of stuff. But let's talk about the elementary school students. I've heard huge success stories with the younger kids. So can you talk a little bit to that?
Yeah. A lot of times it's very difficult for parents to get their kids connected during the pandemic, and we were having a lot of difficulties that the siblings weren't always able to get onto their classes or help the younger siblings. So with this process, we were able to build an environment that parents felt safe either bringing their students back because they were able to come onto campus for the tribunal process and see how we were running the classrooms, how everyone was social distance. And because we have so many families, we have kids K through 12, so I have a family where I have siblings in every single grade almost. So just getting one of those younger students back in brought the others back because they felt responsible, like they had to set an example for them. So because our older students are there and they see these examples and the positive influences, we have more buy-in from the families.
What a great opportunity. Again, I just think it's fantastic. Okay, so high school teacher. Okay, I'm going to throw you a softball on this one because I know it's going to be a great answer. I don't know what it's going to be, but it's going to be good. What was your graduation rate for your students?
100% of our seniors graduated this year.
That's
and
amazing.
Talk about your STAR scores.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And we had 100% passing rate for our U.S. history students. And we actually had a couple of our students from that class that were in our tribunal processes that we brought back to campus and were able to bring up their scores and pass. So the tribunal process works. It's proven, we've seen it, and it makes such a positive environment for the kids to come back into. Because they're not behind now. They've had the compassion from the teachers to catch up because we're able to connect with them and understand what's going on in their lives.
I love it. Well, congratulations on that. Those are staggering, huge, successful numbers. And again, that's what we need to be celebrating in the world of education. So thank you so much to Judge John Payton, to Mrs. Stacy Weaver. Thank you to Principal Javier Chaparro, and thank you to Brandy Braley. We appreciate all of y'all being here. We appreciate your time, and we hope that this will help you achieve 99% attendance